This is Juliana, and I'm here with Simo, my illustrious co-host
Illustrious indeed.
that just launched the update of the server-side course on Simmer.
Yeah. Oh wow, you have a soundboard too?
No, I just it's the
We
wrong
could do an
one.
episode. Okay, somebody's gonna take these soundboards away from us soon, and I think we deserve that. Yeah, thank you. We did launch the update, and yeah, it's been a long time coming. Obviously, server-side tagging. The course is almost as old as the concept itself. We launched the course some months after it was officially released as a public beta. And of course, we've done some touch ups over the years, and luckily, the paradigm hasn't changed all that much. So the so-called old course was still very accurate in many ways, but at the same time, it was Simmer's first course, and we've learned a lot on the way. We've updated a lot of our AV standards, our quality standards. So it was a long time coming, and the new version of the course is different, even though there's a lot of the same. There's been a lot of realignment in the curriculum. I think that the flow is much better now. I've removed a lot of stuff that I think was breaking the flow, which I think some people might grumble about, that they're losing content. But those people that would grumble, well, I mean, they still have access to the old course, so they can always look at it there. And I kind of want to move some of that more complicated content to, blog posts and others where I don't have to worry that much about keeping it up to date. For example, we had this really, really elaborate topic on how to deploy server-side GTM on AWS.
Mm.
And it's just, if anybody's ever used AWS, you know that it's kind of messy and it changes a lot, I think even more frequently than GCP. So even though you could still do it step by step, the UI is quite different. And I don't want to keep a 20-minute super in-depth video up to date all the time. It's just too much stress,
It's
and it
that
doesn't really,
technical depth.
yeah, and it doesn't really add to the course itself, because by the time you want to deploy server-side GTM in AWS, you probably already know quite a bit about server-side GTM, and you probably already have people doing the AWS stuff for you. So with those two expertise combined, you can do the deployment without me showing probably a suboptimal way of doing it, because I'm not an AWS engineer. I don't know what's the best way to do it. I can do Elastic Beanstalk, but that's it. There are probably so many more better ways to do it. So in a nutshell, we've done a lot of streamlining, just made it more of a course than a bunch of reference videos. And I'm really proud of it. I like how it turned out. And I have a lot of ideas for blog posts. I actually just finished recording a video for our Simmer blog, a really, really cool topic, and I'm going to release it hopefully very soon, around server-side tagging.
I would ask you when, but I'm afraid with this podcast episodes because
Yeah.
we never know when it come out.
I'm going to say next week, so you can use whatever frame of reference you have for that. It's going to come out next week, but yeah, I don't know what that is in the real world. But yeah, we got the course out. It's been fun. It's liberating as well, because that was our big course work for this year. We're still working on the technical marketing handbook, of course, and then next year we can focus on completely different courses again. So I'm happy that we got it out.
So there was this thread on Measure Slack, and we were talking about T-shaped skills. But in analytics, there is also a need for T-shaped skills. So because there's a lot of people that listen to the podcast that are just starting their career as digital
Mm,
analysts. What would you say for these people that want to immerse in server side, but that they're only used to client side? Like, what are some main
mm,
differences? What are some main benefits for them to start learning about server side tagging?
yeah.
You should definitely do it from Seymour, but we will
No, no,
probably hate you if you do it from somebody else. But that's another story.
no, no. I mean, that's no, no. I'm like, first of all, let me just put it out there. I am. This is going to sound like a humble brag, but I only want people to learn stuff. Like, I don't care where they get their learnings. If they come to Simmer, I'm of course happy, and I'm pretty sure that our content is very good. So you know, take a Simmer course if you want. I'm not going to hunt you down if you take like an Analytics Mania course or a CXL course. I'm totally cool with that. Okay, let's get that out of the way. That was a disclaimer. Um, so the ramp up, I think, first of all, we're going to talk with our guest about this, because so we have Khrystyna Grynko from Google, who's our cloud customer engineer, and this is one of the questions I want to ask her. Like, what would you just suggest for people who want to like take a look at the cloud? What's a good learning path? Server side tagging, I think, is a great way to get to know the cloud. I think that for people in our industry, there are two paths right now, and I'm stereotyping a bit because I'm talking about the Google stack. So for those who use GTM or Google Analytics, there's GA4 with the BigQuery export, which exposes you to a certain type of cloud. It exposes you to cloud as a computation device. So you're using cloud to do data warehousing, to run queries. You're using the scale of the cloud for that. Server-side GTM introduces a bit more to the kind of infrastructure as a service. So using the cloud to host web servers, to host memory intensive and computation intensive processes that a server would be. So I think that um, if you want to get started with server-side GTM, you don't need cloud engineering expertise. I state this very clearly in our course as well. However, you also need to not be allergic to accumulating that expertise. So you have to have an open mind. I think that when people think of the cloud platform, they usually think of AWS because that's kind of the prototypical cloud. And if they've ever visited the dashboard of AWS, they'll know that it's an absolute horror. Like there are just so many Lego pieces, and you just have to figure out how they all mesh together. And I think that that's turned off people over the years from ever looking at the cloud. But now with services like server-side GTM that bridge together something that we're very familiar with, which is GTM, with something that we're not that familiar with, which is the cloud, I think it's a great way to get started. And you can kind of take it piecemeal, just one bit at a time. First, kind of understand how virtual instances work, then try to figure out how custom domains and DNS works, then think about how scale up auto scaling works, what are cold boots. It all comes to you when you use the service. And of course, if you have someone in your organization who's kind of taking charge of cloud services, a cloud engineer, then that's a solid way to partner with.
It's cool. The way I learned about the cloud for the first time was in 2000. Oh, so I'm gonna show my age. 2014 or 2015.
You're young. Don't kid yourself.
I'm so old, Simo. I feel so, but that's another story. But I was working as that was my first job as a product manager, product owner for this company that was doing server clustering. I had no idea what that is back then. So I was working with AWS and DigitalOcean a lot back then. In those days, Google Cloud, it was like probably the worst. I'm sorry to say this, but it
It
wasn't as
was.
it is right now with so
Mm,
many tools and features. So mostly everyone that needed virtual servers or virtual private servers to host their websites, to host their blogs, they were going either to DigitalOcean, they were going to AWS for an EC2, or they were going to I don't know, Hostinger or rather like share hosting. So there is when I had the chance to learn about DNS, about FTP, about HT access, like all of these things, like you get to learn, and they kind of stick with you. So if you have, I think this is the building blocks of the internet. Like we're
mm.
going back to technical marketing. This type of knowledge is very accessible, and if you want to like play around, you can just make a fake website and or just make a website that you can use to test with and go in GCP and get that free 3 months trial. You just need to show a payment method, and then you can start playing with Cloud Function and Compute Engine and all the good stuff that there's available there, so you can learn how it works. It's a very rewarding experience. So when I started working with GCP, I wasn't a total idiot because I was doing that server clustering and load balancing. So a lot of these terms you will find today because yeah, I'm excited. We have a guest that actually works in this domain, and she's the first person actually. If you remember technical marketing mini degree, she taught the course about BigQuery, and that's the first time I met Christina, and I learned about BigQuery from her, which is a really cool experience. So ever since she put out a lot of content, so I have so many questions for her because now BigQuery is like something on everyone's mouth. It's like so mainstream, and
Mm.
a lot of people complain about GA4, and we acknowledged that a few episodes ago. But like one good thing that GA4 did for the marketing community and digital marketers is to, in a way, enforcively push them into learning more stuff. Like I think our role as marketers vis-a-vis also to that thread on measures, like is like to learn, constantly learn. Like we cannot just say we know universal analytics and that's it. We don't need to learn more. We cannot expand our horizons more. So like I get that it sucks, but there's some
Mhm.
opportunities that tools bring or technologies bring to help us, step outside of our comfort zone and keep our
Yeah.
edges sharp. Rant over.
No, but no, that's actually an interesting discussion from an educator's point of view. So it's kind of a cloud with a silver lining to say that a good thing about GA4 is that it forces you to use BigQuery. So it's possible that there are people who are just even more turned off by the cloud because they are now forced to use a tool. It doesn't come voluntarily. They don't necessarily see BigQuery as a benefit. They just see it as a way to get another tool to work, and so that's the extent of their knowledge. And I think that for those people, if I were a cloud educator, I would very seriously think, how do I demystify the cloud for these people? Because there's a risk that they'll be kind of they'll feel like we have to use BigQuery because that's the only ways we can access GA4, and they'll just never ever want to dive deeper into what BigQuery enables. And that's I've noticed that in our Simmer's BigQuery courses, that some of the students are genuinely there only because they dislike GA4's what GA4 offers for them. And that's, feel free to be motivated to learn in whatever way you want, but to me that doesn't sound like a healthy way to start accumulating knowledge. You have to have a kind of intrinsic motivation. The motivation has to come from somewhere else except as an obligation from some external source. So I'm really curious about this, and this would again be something interesting to talk to Khrystyna about, because she works with BigQuery and she works with customers who use BigQuery. Has she noticed a an uptick in BigQuery users in organizations where you wouldn't previously have seen something like that, thanks to the GA4 migration? And B, has she seen kind of resentment from users that why do we have to use this stupid table unnest format that it's so clumsy to use in so many cases? Um, and then you have, article after article after article coming out from really good analytics engineers explaining to you, this is how you use BigQuery to get the proper session sources from GA4, or this is how you use BigQuery to avoid accumulating huge costs, or this is how you use BigQuery as an analytics hub. So it's kind of, for some users, I think, where the optimal way of learning BigQuery would be to start from scratch and understanding SQL and understanding how different things work together, and then ramping up your knowledge to more complicated queries, then thinking about the overall infrastructure. Some users are kind of forced to jump into the deep end because of GA4. And that is a kind of a sink or a swim moment. And some of them will sink, and they'll be completely alienated from the cloud as a result. This is my hypothesis. I don't know if that's the case.
No, it's an excellent point of view. A course provider reached out to me to recommend people that can do a BigQuery course for GA4. And I said to them, a BigQuery course for GA4 can take from 10 to 30 minutes if you want
Mm,
to just show the interface and how to
yeah,
use it. Like, you need to teach a SQL course and then you need to teach a BigQuery course. But like the most understanding for non-technical people or for like people that are just, in that mindset is that BigQuery is just like a feature of
yeah,
GA4 that they need to figure out how to use so they can do their job. And I can appreciate that in cases when there's companies or agencies where just it's just one analyst that has to take care of everything. And I feel for that because there's so
mm,
many cases like that. But again, like BigQuery is just an interface
mm,
to actually using SQL to make better decisions, to be able to query data, to understand
yeah.
data, to work with data. I totally agree with this. And there's thankfully so many good SQL courses and
Mm,
good free courses and on free
yeah.
code camp on, even paid ones on, I like the data camp ones. I think
And
even
Mode Analytics. So Mode Analytics does a seriously good SQL course, like really good. I think it's free.
oh,
It used to
definitely
be
we need
free.
to we need
Yeah,
to link that. I did until intermediate in my case with SQL because when I
yeah.
I got to case case
Yeah.
statements is where it died for me. I was like, okay, I know enough. Let's move on. I know enough how to read a query.
Yeah.
So it can get complicated, but I think if you would think about SQL and JavaScript, I think SQL is probably a bit easier to learn. And this
Well,
is just that's my
yeah.
opinion. That's my opinion.
Well, this is a classic example of what is the easiest language, like spoken language in the world, and people always say the Finnish is really difficult. Well,
Not that difficult.
coming from a linguist background, it's all every single language has its own difficulties, and it's just a nuanced discussion. Same
Yeah.
goes with programming languages. I think that where SQL is an interesting topic, and this thought I inherit from Matt Gershoff, with whom I've had these discussions, is that SQL is a query language, but at the same time, it's a way to structure the world. So it's not just about figuring out how do I get data A from column B in a format C. It's also about how do I structure my analytics database to make it easier to query it? How do I build these relationships between different tables and entities? SQL comes with an understated and a hidden agenda of kind of rewiring your brain to look at the world in a different way. And this sounds grandstanding, but the more you use SQL, I think you also become better at structuring and organizing the data that you work with. It's not just a pull relationship. You're not just querying data, you're actually pushing the knowledge about what you're doing. JavaScript is kind of similar, especially when used in the web browser, in that the more you have to write those clumsy dumb scraping scripts to get your values, the more you'll figure out how to better write them into a semantic data layer, for example. So by learning how to use these languages, you also learn how to structure the world around you. And SQL has this kind of understated, or this undercurrent. And I think that if people are open to this, um, it will make them better analysts, because when you start writing those complicated queries against the GA4 export, for example, you'll notice quite quickly where your own source data is inefficient. You'll find that you've structured it incorrectly or suboptimally. Either GA4 has done it, and then you'll learn how to kind of patch it with transformations and building your views. So you're using your SQL knowledge to kind of fix the underlying state of the world. Um,
I
so
love
I think,
that.
yeah, but it's not, like I said. This is directly from the brain of Matt Gershoff.
He does that. He has the tendency
Yeah,
to
he
drop some
does.
of that,
Yeah,
those
but
gems.
it is a good point, and it really brings us back to language as a reference of the world itself. It's not
Yeah.
just a tool; it's a way that we interpret and reference the world. And the same goes for programming languages, even if it might not be that kind of influential to your life as a spoken language is, but there's certainly a
No,
seed of
I
truth there.
did. My first talk at the Measure Camp was exactly about what JavaScript and SQL teaches you as a
Yeah,
better, marketer. And I
yeah,
always said that JavaScript helps you with problem statements and be able to define problems. Because if you are not capable of defining, the
mm,
issues that you want to get from the code and defining, the problem very clear, you won't be able to, the code is not going to understand what you have to say. And for SQL, I always said that it helps with better critical thinking and questions, like asking better questions. Or because if you don't ask the right question in SQL, you won't get the right
yeah,
answer. So it's
yeah.
like, besides the practical
It's a good point.
skills, you also have like better critical thinking, more
Yeah,
organized thinking, because that's the difference between talking with machines and versus talking with humans. Is with humans we do understand nuance, we do
mm,
understand all the things, but when you're talking to machine, if you don't give the machine what it needs, then you won't get the answer that you're looking for, and you won't even be able to recognize if the
yeah.
answer is wrong or right. So
There,
it's a very interesting.
there's also another aspect of programming languages that I don't think people think about that much, at least in our industry. Again, like if you're a project software developer for projects, you certainly have to think about this. But programming can turn you into a more empathetic person, actually, because when you're working by yourself in GTM, for example, or by yourself as the analyst, you're just writing queries for the heck of it. You're writing queries that work, right? You're writing code that works. That's your number one goal. When you start working with other people in a team or a software project or an analytics project, you have to actually write code that is usable by others as well and readable by others. So there are many different ways to write a simple SQL statement. There are many different ways to write a JavaScript expression. only a handful of those are actually useful in a community. So the more you work with others, the more your code is scrutinized by others, and this is kind of a hat tip to the open source movement, the better you'll be as a developer, but also the more empathetic you'll be as a developer, because you'll have to think about the legacy of what you're writing, and you have to worry about things like technical debt. And this is something that, in BigQuery, for example, we have tools like Dataform in the Google Cloud Platform. We have DBT. We have all these different ways. We have Analytics Hub. We have all these different ways of turning your code into a collaborative effort. So other people can contribute to the SQL as well. Other people can contribute to your world building. And that, again, is something we want to talk with Khrystyna about is when she's working with customers, is she trying to solve a problem, or is she trying to solve for the organization, which I think is a super interesting discussion to be had as well.
Yeah, yeah, very excited to have Khrystyna, and before we invite her in, before we we serve her the last drink in the lobby, I need to embarrass you again, just to drop our discount, because I know we already. I'm gonna force you again. I have a new
No worries.
song. I always
Okay.
have a new song for you. It cannot. I always think it's not gonna be as bad as last time, but I always win.
You always top yourself.
Come on, it's starting. I promise. I'm in a
So
metal
it,
mode.
and you got the fire, what was that, a fire truck or an ambulance
Now I
in your
have the
background?
always because I
Yeah.
live next to a hospital and a police station. It's
Oh,
always
okay.
something. But my windows are closed. I have my
Yeah.
fan on. I'm sorry, but yeah, this
Yeah.
is the time.
Yeah, that was a very interesting piece of music. It started with the kind of it started. I was very worried because it had the Metallica Saint Anger snare drum sound. It wasn't very impressive, but then it kind of switched into a kind of a
System of
groove.
a Downish.
Yeah, kind of a groove metal riff. Anyway, interesting stuff. A lot of things you could do with a single chord. Yeah, so Simmer, it's an online training platform, I think, and we
You
we
think?
just released. Yeah, it's a lifestyle. We just released our server side tagging course. If you are, again, I don't know about when this episode is going to come out, but take a look at join our mailing list if you haven't already, because we share some discounts there every now and then. The new version of server side tagging is out, and if you want to buy one of our individual courses with a bit of a discount, use the coupon code DEVIATE, that's DEVIATE, for 10% off an individual course. It won't apply to bundles, but it will apply to individual courses. See
Awesome,
you there.
awesome. Yes. Now let's get Khrystyna on.
Oh wow!
Did you hear the? Yeah, exactly. Hey, that's the
I like the
Hey,
sound.
for future listeners, that is the correct reaction to my amazing soundboard.
Exactly.
Wow! And I found the right button on the first try. There are some very fishy buttons here as well, but I picked the right one. Khrystyna Ringo, thank you so much for coming. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
So, oh, thank you. We're very good, or I am. I don't know about Juliana.
I'm good too, apparently.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I think yeah, we're just a collective unit at this point. So you're a cloud customer engineer at Google. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, sure. So, yeah, the custom engineers, what do they do exactly? Well, you can name them differently: sales engineers or pre-sales engineers. It's the salesperson, but at the same time, technical salesperson. So I need to
Right.
understand the different specifics of our services, be able to demo, to sometimes help some implement some easy stuff, or during the POC, the proof of concept, for example,
Mm,
and to do the different workshops, presentations, but all that are technical, and sometimes go into the details of how exactly the services work. And as a customer engineer, we sometimes have different specializations, because Google Cloud has a lot of services. It's impossible to know everything. So
mm.
I'm specialized in our data analytics products.
So you come from a digital analytics background, like you have previous employment in like more traditional digital analytics roles. Was it an easy transition for you to move from digital analytics to the cloud?
So I even had, I would say, two transitions because I first started in marketing, and then I was like, oh, there is digital marketing. Let's try some digital marketing. And then there was like Google Analytics. What do we use Google Analytics for? And it looked so technical to me. I was like, oh my God, there's JavaScript and some pieces of code to put on the website. Like, how can I possibly ever pass this Google Analytics certification exam that is 2 hours?
Yeah.
But gradually I started preparing for it and passed the certification, and immediately, like, I was a Google Analytics expert in my in my company, and everybody was like, oh, ask Khrystyna, she knows everything about Google Analytics. I was like, okay, wow, now I'm a
Some
Google
pressure.
Analytics expert. Yes.
Yeah.
And then I started when googling about Google Analytics, etc. Like, I started following some big names like you Simon, for example, and you Juliana in this area, and then I was like, okay, so digital analytics is great, but like, what do you do if you want to combine digital
Mm.
data with some offline data? And here you are. There's cloud, and I remember my first conversation at Super Week. This was my first Super Week, and I was like, okay, they all talk a little bit about cloud as
Mm.
well, and wow, but how do I actually start that? And at this point, yeah, I'm afraid to say that, but I didn't understand what cloud is at that
Mm.
point. I was like, cloud? What does it actually mean? And when I asked for I remember that I wanted to implement something for my customer, the consolidated data in BigQuery. I knew that it sounded super great, and I was like, yeah, but how do I do that actually? And I asked some bunch of super intelligent folks at Super Week, like, how do I do that? And they started explaining me, and was like, what, you put the code where? You you do this cron task to send data every day to cloud storage, and then with cloud function you take data from, and it was all like Chinese to me. I was like, I was taking notes, but I was like, yeah, it's gonna take a while for
Yeah.
me to understand all that. So it was like a next step for me, this transition. And yeah, from digital analytics then to cloud, because now it all works together, right? We
Mm.
cannot, when I go to the conference related to digital analytics, they all talk cloud now.
And
So
now you're the person telling others, like, yeah, you just put the code there, and then you pull the stuff from there, and then you add. So, but but for you, like, you weren't intimidated away. Like, you got thirsty, right? So you knew that the people at Super Week, who obviously were very bad educators based on your description, so they kind of drew up a picture for you that this is all the stuff you could do, and you got super interested about it. What kept you motivated to learn more? Like, did you have um, like business problems that you needed to solve with all these technologies?
yes, absolutely. And I would just correct you, not bad educators. It's just that for them it was so obvious, and I understand them,
Yeah.
because now when I explained anything to my student, I'm like, oh, they don't get it. Why don't they get
Yeah.
it? And then they ask the same question and again. But it helps to build the
Yeah.
patience and to build the understanding that, hey, what's obvious to you, it's not obvious to everyone. So, and at the time, the business problem that I need to solve is to understand how offline is related to online. They were like, yeah, it's great. We do all these ads. We spend a lot of money with you as an agency, because I worked at the agency at the time. But do it was a real estate case, and they were like, yeah, but do these people actually buy our houses? Because yeah, we spend a lot. We have these leads, but do we have anything? And I was like, yeah, but do we have CRM? Yes, of course we do have CRM, but maybe let's combine this data first, of course. um, you need to hide the personal info, like, because we as agency are not supposed to have it. But then let's go by ID, some encrypted data or something, just to understand that, hey, they spent $1 on Google Ads and they got,
Mm,
I don't know, a house bought for 1 million. So this already
yeah.
shows some results, right? This is the problem that I needed to solve, and there was no one in my agency to help me. So I was like the data person there. So it was up to me to figure this out.
This is very interesting and kind of like touches Simo really gave me this one right at the fence, because we were speaking a bit about in the intro that you have to have the right motivation to learn about cloud, about BigQuery, about SQL, and like there's a succession and order of things so they make sense. Like now, because GA4 made it mainstream, made cloud mainstream and BigQuery mainstream, there's a lot of analysts that are struggling to catch up and trying to learn BigQuery. So we wanted to ask you, like, in your experience, do you see that people are excited about the cloud because of GA4, or you feel like people kind of feel like, ah, damn, now I have to learn BigQuery, now I have to learn this stuff. Like, what is your experience with this right now and with the learning?
Well, because I'm a little bit biased, because I am excited myself, I think everyone is excited. I'm like, obviously, of course, you all have to be excited. And But I think in our domain, people are so curious and
Mm,
so used to learn by themselves because, yeah, like you don't have that much of studying related to
mm,
all this stuff, right? They start having it, but still you need to update constantly yourself on different topics related to data and digital analytics, etc. So I think people are rather flexible from what I see, and they want to learn and they want to go there. It's just that yeah, it's maybe our job of as somehow content creators to
mm.
explain it easily, like with your courses, Fox, with your posts, explain like, hey, it's easy, it's okay, you just start step by step, like, and I mean, when we write our articles or posts, we need to be mindful that there are people that starts really from zero. And when you say, yeah, you just write select and then put where, and you will have everything. But sometimes they just don't know where I put it,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
where is the space where I just start typing my SQL query?
So do you think that it would make sense? Yeah, if I do the BigQuery export and I've never used SQL before, and then I click open the project and I enter the BigQuery console, and I've never used GCP before, I am kind of bewildered. Like, what do I do now?
Hmm.
I can see a bunch of tables here and a bunch of things here. Do you think it would make sense for content creators and others to think about this very first? Is this the most important
Hmm.
friction step? Like, come up with templates for GA4 specifically. Just add these saved queries and replace your this variable with your actual project ID, and then just start querying. Because I think there's a problem. There's the very first step problem. What do I do first,
Hmm.
and how do I avoid generating thousands of dollars of billing costs because I happen to do a complicated select star over terabytes of data.
I would suggest that you use a BigQuery sandbox and you use
Mm.
do your select star there first. But I mean, the great thing is that first of all, to learn how to use it, you have all the free tools available for that, right? You have BigQuery sandbox, which is the free space where you can try
Mm.
BigQuery out. Then you have BigQuery public dataset, and the one is GA4 obfuscated data. It's not a real data, but it gives you the idea of what you will have if you start your
Mm.
exports, right? And then there you can do your select stars request to kind of train yourself a little bit. Like
Yeah.
you go to this, you open this table, right, and then you click create new query, and then it automatically creates the query template for
Yeah.
you, and then you just add star and you click run, and you have your first query.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you're proficient in SQL.
let's let's do a
People
disclaimer.
add
Don't
that to
don't
LinkedIn.
yeah, don't do select star. Let's do a disclaimer right now. Like just avoid
Yes,
that.
that's true. That's what Google Cloud says in all the
Yeah.
cost optimization webinars and articles. Hey guys, avoid using. Hey folks, avoid using select star.
Star, yeah.
But there are also, so there are different articles from digital analytics specialists with the examples of queries that you can kind of
Yeah.
use and try on this data. And there are also examples of queries on the Google website, support for Google Analytics website, where you have the examples of queries. And I just want to kind of say in this podcast that sometimes to start querying your data, you don't have to be advanced SQL user.
Mhm.
You just need to have the basics, because sometimes you really need the basic things. Sometimes
Yeah.
you need to choose two columns and filter by the, I don't know, by city, for example. And this kind of queries, it's pretty easy to start with. But
Yeah.
yeah, once again, like for those who create articles and courses, etc., you just need to provide people this first step, because sometimes, yeah, okay, I understand that SQL you need to put select this and that from, but sometimes
Mm.
where do you put it? Where do I
Yeah.
start writing
Exactly.
it?
Yeah. Well, that's a good, so the progression idea, that's a great example. So sometimes you just need to start with a very, and it's a good way to kind of get your feet wet. But at the same time, when you're working with GA4, for example, which you might want to build a query that fills some feature gap that GA4 doesn't yet support. So, and those queries can get really complicated. You're doing like
Yes.
session scope queries across their user history, you're doing window functions, you're doing nested queries, and I've always felt that there's a risk that this kind of Stack Overflow phenomenon, where you Google a problem, you find the code, you copy paste it, and then you run it. And I'm just wondering, like, frustration management point of view, how do we prevent users from being overwhelmed, or should we even prevent being overwhelmed by the code they copy pasted because they have no idea what it does or how it works or if the results are even reliable? Like,
Hmm.
what would be a way to kind of manage that that kind of
Okay.
frustration?
Okay. Okay. You make me advertise all the recent updates for
Oh,
Google
please
Cloud
do.
Services, etc. So, well, my recent experience, I have, it's been a long time since I worked with Google Analytics data in BigQuery, because now I don't work with Google Analytics that much. And I recently needed to show an example with Google Analytics data of the query, and I had the idea about the query, so I asked Bard to write the query for me.
No.
Because I was like, I don't have time for that.
Of course you did.
And of course, you need to debug then sometimes, because
Mm.
sometimes you don't write the prompt in the right way, so it
Mm.
understands you immediately. Then you can kind of, okay, let's make some corrections, like let's debug it. And when you copy paste the query into the BigQuery editor, it kind of tells you immediately if you have any errors, like you have on your right some red or green icon. So yeah, one of the things Google Cloud announced recently, do it AI in BigQuery, right? When you start writing the query, and then it gives you the template of how the structure of the query looks like. So, and these are two options, of course. And next options, it's all the different articles with the examples. Sometimes you're like, how I do the, I don't know, the analysis per
Mm.
event with Google Analytics data. Sometimes you find this information in different articles that our colleagues, our colleagues from the data industry and digital
Mm.
analytics industry, they kindly posted, and then this is just try and try,
Mm.
fail, succeed the process, right? You
Yeah.
sometimes it is frustrating indeed when you need to kind of debug your code and you're newbie in SQL and like, I don't understand, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I would suggest, like, if you tried everything like Google, Bart, etc., in Duet I would suggest that you can ask people as well
Yeah.
in different communities, chats. They are really great and they help. It
Yeah.
Or
works.
start by taking a SQL course
Yeah.
first. Yeah, like you could take like a SQL course and then it would be probably easier. Like I guess that's my next question, Christina. Like, do you think we should in general like learn about the benefits of the cloud and the benefits of using SQL outside of having to use it to make a tool work, or get more data out of a tool? Like, because now cloud is very mainstream. Like the true purpose of using cloud is obviously making your work stream easier, making sure you save on the resources, you have the security, you have privacy. Like there's so many benefits to the cloud. And both me and Simon were talking earlier in the intro, like how much, and this is not us advertising Google at in any way chance, but we were saying that over the years, the features and the tools available in the GCP stack are really, really amazing, and there's so many things you can do, like create an app, create two apps, have your own infrastructure. But knowing all of these things, for most of the digital analytics community right now, GA4 and BigQuery is just like an entry point to the cloud, right? So,
Right.
in your opinion, like if somebody is right now just hit with the cloud and having to understand, like, what are the best ways for them to learn more? Would it be taking a SQL course? Would it be taking the, I don't know, Cloud Digital Leader certification? Like, what would be some good resources for people to get their feet wet to understand the value of the cloud and the services that they can, do within the cloud?
Okay, so I know that everybody has their own way of learning. For example, I remember that when first I started working with BigQuery, when I worked in digital marketing agency, what my approach was is, so I needed to solve the issue quickly. So I didn't have the time to go through the courses that were saying like, hey, this is a 4-week specialization. I was like, no, sorry, I cannot do that. What else do we have? So what I did, for example, to start is that I started going through all the YouTube videos related to BigQuery I could find. It's literally like I tapped BigQuery in YouTube, and then I had my list, and I'm like, okay, let's go. I know what I will do this weekend. So, and my approach was, because I didn't understand what it all meant, I was like, okay, I will gradually understand it with every video I watch, because I have the different way of presenting the information from different speakers, from different teachers. I was like, okay, now I understand 1%. With next video, I
Mm.
understand 2%. Next video, maybe I understand 5%, etc. So eventually, I was like, and I was taking some notes, and I eventually was like, oh, okay, that is what it all means. Okay, but now you have more and more super cool resources to get you starting. So, for example, I really love the free sources for education, and I think there are, for example, there is a Quick Labs website that is now
Yeah.
called Cloud Skill Boost, and there are some labs that are that you need to have a credits for, and there are some labs that are free. There's quite a lot of them, and to kind of get your feet wet in the cloud and to start something in the cloud, I would suggest to go through the lab, because it's literally step-by-step guide of what to do. It creates a sandbox environment for you, so you can go and start learning by doing, because I know that
Mm.
some people prefer learning by doing. There are, of course, a bunch of different books like Preparation for Data Engineer Exam in Google Cloud, which is quite good as well. But I know that not everyone loves to learn something with the books. So,
Yeah.
but like if you have the specific case as I used to have, and you need to kind of start learn by doing because you don't have time, the good option is Quick Labs. If you want to know in general what the cloud is and what are the benefits and etc., and you want to start, for example, with Google Cloud, I would suggest Cloud Digital Leader exam, because while preparing to that through Coursera course or through the documentation, while preparing to that, you kind of get all this necessary high level knowledge about the cloud.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been delaying that exam for a year almost because I I took the courses. Watched all the videos, but like I heard the exam is one of the hardest exams in cloud. I really did my research before.
Mm-hmm.
AWS and Azure ones were considered the hardest cloud exams, but Google said no. I'm gonna make the hardest exam, and I did like a few I think they're like this fake test to see if you pass the exam.
Mm-hmm.
I failed it like 3 times with 39 points. And I was like,
Okay.
oh, so I've been delaying it. So like if you take that one, you have to learn. Like there's no way, and it's Proctor too. So like that's a good one because it really goes into all the services and it explains like what are the benefits for retailer and B2B and public
Mm-hmm.
sector and everything. So and about that, like I want to talk about that also because I know you work with the public sector. Like, what are the main differences between public sector and retail? Like, what are people thinking about when it comes to the cloud? If you can
Mm-hmm.
talk about that, of course.
I would say the main difference is the fact that in retail you go pretty quickly because you have the
Mhm.
next event, the Christmas sales or the Black Friday sales, and then you have this and that. You don't have to time to think whether we should use cloud or not. It's kind of it's a must, right? You need to go fast and with public sector it just because I when I worked in agency I worked with all the type of customers except for public sector, and then in Google Cloud I started working with public sector. It just takes more time. It takes more time. It takes more discussions about, of course, data privacy, about data security, about encryption, etc. And the cases are, of course, different because now you don't try to sell something to people, but you're mostly try to solve citizens' problems, and it's super interesting, but it's a completely different world. So.
And education matters so much and understanding the
Mhm.
problems. And we were talking a bit before you joined us into the lobby for a drink, Simo, that when you're doing sales, you have to be technical, you have to be persuasive, you have to be understanding,
That's
you have
right.
to be everything. It's like a whole it's a very hard job because you're a trusted advisor, so it takes so
Mhm.
much knowledge and so much understanding and patience to be able to solve those problems. So I have a lot of respect for what you do because it's a very hard job. I know that's why I don't do it anymore because I wasn't good at it.
I think the fact that I give lectures in some universities helped me to be more pedagogical and more maybe selective about the terms I use sometimes, so that I
Mm.
can explain it simpler. In sometimes because we have to realize that people are completely from different sectors, and you don't understand their domain, they don't understand yours, and as well, I mean, if we talk about public sector customers, for example, with French public sector customers, I speak French, so I need to be mindful about usage of English terms because we're used in Google or just in our world of data and digital analytics to use this English terms. So, yeah.
So
It's cool.
going beyond like individual learning and trying to figure out how an individual best learns about SQL and BigQuery, what would be your tips for an organization to collaboratively use cloud services? Like, let's say we have a data organization and we have data in BigQuery. What are some of the tools and kind of tricks of the trade that the Google Cloud Platform offers for collaboration? I'm thinking more in terms of tools like Analytics Hub, Dataform, that even Colab
Yes,
that give you
yes.
like a space that you can work on SQL together, solve problems together, share data sets with other people,
Hmm.
agencies.
Yes, yes, sure. So, Yes, as you say, it definitely Analytics Hub, right? And the part of Data Analytics Hub, which is data clean rooms, something that was announced recently. And the data form, I think it was a super important add to BigQuery space because yes, I had the questions about, yeah, but what about version controls
Mm,
for the queries, and what about reusage of different elements, right? And
yeah.
these basics questions, when you say like, whenever I have a code, even if it's SQL, okay, it's not a
Mm,
programming language, but still, whenever you have a code, you need to have this in your system. And now we have it, and I'm super happy about it. And data form is definitely something to learn about and to start using.
yeah.
And it's free. It's integrated into BigQuery, so naturally, if you use BigQuery, it's already an option. And there is BigQuery Studio in preview as well. The notebooks that you can launch
Yeah.
in
It
BigQuery.
was really
It,
cool.
yeah, it is. It is. It's not available to everyone yet, but it will be. And this is a cool addition as well. And yeah, I mean, there is the BigQuery Omni as well that gives you the possibility to connect to data that is stored in other clouds as well. And
Right.
this is a product that is developing, and it's all about that. Hey, you might have data in different places, but you need you need some place to kind of work on it together. And yeah,
Yeah.
this one is a great addition as well.
I'm in love
Eh,
with Jupyter notebooks myself. Like if I
mm.
could do everything in Jupyter notebooks, I would do it. And I actually started preferring it to Looker Studio these days because you can make it work
Hey,
with
Google Colab. You've got direct API authentication links. You don't even have to
Yeah,
worry about that stuff.
I love it.
that's right.
Hey, I wanna throw something out there and have you react. I just came up with a killer like content idea. So because there are these complex queries all around, and people write, "This is how you get blah 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 in BigQuery, and this is
Mhm.
how you do this in SQL." So like a video series where we take a super complicated query and then tear it down. So not like bottom up, but like top down. So we don't start like this is how you measure sessions in BigQuery, but instead we have the query and then we start taking individual parts like this is the first CTE. Let's see what that does. Okay, here we have a cross join with an unnest. Let's see what happens after the unnest, but before the cross join. Okay, so here we
Mhm.
have a window function. Let's see what happens if we just do that. Because I think that's missing. I think that's the intimidating part is you copy paste this huge complex query and then you look at all
Yeah.
these like first values and partitions and unnests. And when we did the BigQuery course with Johan, one of my favorite pieces of content to work with was the simplest thing you can do in BigQuery, which is you highlight a part of the query and then press run. And then it only runs the highlighted part. I think that's
Mhm.
totally underused because it lets you kind of inspect what individual parts of the query do. I just wish it were now when you run a BigQuery, you can look at kind of the steps that it took to complete the job, but it's total gibberish to like a non-engineer person. What I think would be a really cool BigQuery feature is if it actually showed you the shape of the data at every step of the query, like for those jobs. It shows you like this is the table that was generated by this is the next table that was generated. Just
You
throwing it out
mean
there.
you mean something like the highlight of what every part of the query can give as a result, like
Well,
something like
more
that?
more in terms of like I run a really complicated query, and then there's the kind of the step I don't know what it's called, but the part where you can see what kind of individual processes were run at every step. But in
Mhm.
addition to that, it would be cool to see like what was the state of the data at each step. Like when here's what happens during an unnest, and it will actually show me like the I could expand and see the unnested data set. Then it's cross joined. Then I could actually see the cross joined data set. Then it's filtered, and I could actually see the filter. I don't know. It's probably impossible to do in reality, but we could like totally do a video series where we tear those queries down.
Wow.
You should.
You're Yeah, go
Go
ahead,
ahead. No,
Juliana.
no, go ahead. I was thinking about those website teardowns, but nerdier.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
that, yeah.
You have some brilliant ideas here. So
Well, every now and then I get lucky. I don't know if this is a good idea or not. Um, But it's yeah,
I didn't know it was a brainstorm session or something.
yeah. It just turned into one. Yeah, yeah.
Anything happens in this
yeah.
podcast.
You can invoice our podcast later. We don't have any money, but I'm sure that we can kind of do something. But yeah, it's just I'm like we've been talking about is this idea of demystifying a very complicated thing, and whether it's
Yeah.
the cloud, whether it's a SQL query, whether it's a JavaScript code, whether it's a business question. I think like from an education and from a sales point of view, that's what we have to do. It's kind of uncharitable to just throw the solution out there when you don't know if it's actually being appreciated for what it is. So being able to tear those things down would be kind of interesting too.
It's like, this, we say there's this typical programming course that says, here how you can do 1 plus 1. And then it's like that you have a task that says, build a calculator. And you're like,
Yeah.
how? Well, I just did 1 plus 1. Okay, this one was clear, but how do I
Yeah.
put it together?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But talking about content, Christina, because we're getting close to wrapping up, where do we find you? Where can people read you? I know you write on Medium and on other places, but I also know you lecture and you also give courses. So if
Hmm.
anyone wants to reach out and learn from you, because I saw how you always like celebrate people that are your students. And I think that's
Hmm.
really cool because you always share their content and their
Oh, that's nice.
certifications.
That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
she's very
I should do
sweet.
that.
She's very sweet, and I always see like this is my student, and he does this, and so she does this. So how can people learn from you, reach out to you, and enjoy your content?
Well, so I would say through LinkedIn for now, and I try sometimes to post some articles on Medium. So far, I have only 4. I might need some advice from you both on how to write more. And I'm not doing any online courses at the moment. So I'm participating in the master school program, which is not like it's a boot camp, 10 months boot camp that teaches people analytics. Um, so yeah, maybe LinkedIn, Medium for now, and I'm currently writing a book as well, but cannot
Ooh.
say anything about it for now.
Uh,
Well, that was a terrible way to wrap up this podcast.
I'm sorry.
And I think that you've been frequenting measure camps now as well, haven't you? You've been in a couple in this year.
Yes, yes, right. I went to one in Paris and to one in Prague, and both were super great. At some point, I stopped going to MeasureCamp because I was like, yeah, it's very digital analytics focused. Maybe I'm
Mm,
not relevant there, but I realized that they talk more and more about
yeah,
cloud, so it makes sense for me to have like my 2 careers combined and
yeah,
maybe go back to this area and to listen to what people talk about their cloud usage for digital analytics. It's super interesting.
yeah. And I think that measure camp, particularly because it's built by the community. I think that
yeah,
Hmm.
especially if you feel like your content might not make sense there, I think that's like a great incentive to actually go there and deliver the content because you're
Yeah,
kind of you can maybe even push the needle and inspire others to branch out from the typical digital analytics content.
absolutely. That's
Yeah.
true.
and God
Well, it
knows
was
we
an
need more of that,
oh
more than
yes,
just.
absolutely, yeah. Somebody else
I'm
than just me. Yeah.
Not you. I'm talking about the topics because, like, every time you go to a measure camp, and God knows, I go to all of them. GA for this and GA for this, and I'm
Yeah,
like, take a
boy.
break,
Come
talk about
on.
something
Yeah,
else.
branch out, people. Branch out. Talk about something else.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for sharing your
Thank you very
advice
much.
and your amazing career. And I really, really hope to see more of you, especially in terms of educational content, which I think that
And
there's
tell us
just so
about the
much more that
book
can be written. Oh yeah, we're gonna have
when
another
you do.
episode about the book. We're
Exactly.
gonna dig some dirt and we're gonna add all about the book into the show notes.
Exactly.
Uh-oh.
Already hacking your account. Already hacking your account.
Thank you so much, Christina. And thanks everyone for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.